Every time a new Joe Bonamassa Epiphone is released, there's a fair bit of polarization. With this 1962 ES-335 tribute, I knew there was going to be an extra icy reception because this is the most expensive Epiphone I've seen released outside of the modern USA and older elitist builds. So I had to check it out, because I'd been considering a 335 for a while anyway. My amazing partners at Down sent one out to me at my request, and I was able to come to the conclusion that I would not be comfortable with it, even though it is a very well-made and rich-sounding guitar. Just in that initial noodling, I ran into my first concern, not with this particular model, but with 335s in general, because they're such giant guitars, where the neck sits relative to the body can present some issues depending on how you sit with the guitar that leads to potentially uncomfortable wrist position. I really like the burst buckers in here. Not just sound-wise, but from an overall build perspective. It's good whenever Epiphone doesn't just throw pro buckers and everything. And I don't mind pro buckers. I have a Koa Top Custom with pro buckers, and they're great in there, but it's just boring when they're in everything, because then guitars are robbed of having their own plugged-in personalities. That's not the case here, thanks to the burst buckers and the Mallory capacitors. I'm not sure what specific capacitor values this guitar has, but I'd guess 033, given the way there's such a full low-mid sound, and a tone pot sweep that goes from boxy to bright without ever being boomy or shrill. I had fun with it, and it sounds as good as I hoped it would, but I can't say it's a guitar I'd get use out of keeping. I always had hopes that one day I'd get something larger than my beloved Starcaster and use it as a Swiss Army knife. It would be loud unplugged, it would be versatile when it's plugged in, and most importantly, it would be just as comfortable. This 335 checks 2 of those boxes, but it's just not comfortable for me. Not when I'm standing, and definitely not when I'm sitting. Outside of that, it's constructed comfortably. I didn't have any issues with the frets or the neck. Just the sheer size of the guitar made it feel like I was fighting with it because it was so far away. But the action was nice and low, the nut was cut perfectly, and I had no issues with the tuning stability even with my unskilled and limited trem use. The grief it's getting isn't surprising considering the Bonamassa releases are where people who like Joe Bonamassa and people who hate him meet to disparage whatever the latest release is. It's also not surprising considering it's an Epiphone. If it were a Guild or a D'Angelico, I don't know that it would get the same hate for being $1,300, but Epiphones made their own bed by existing as a cheaper alternative to Gibson, which psychologically can be conflated with inferior. From my experience with Epiphone, I can say that's a valid concern. My first experience with Epiphone was in 2008. I'd got a Wilshire and it arrived with a broken headstock. An experience that heartbreaking put me off the brand forever. Whether it was right or wrong, I can't say, but I was 14. I reacted emotionally. But in August of 2019, my amazing sister surprised me with a Snow Falcon for my birthday. It was the most flawless guitar I had ever played, and that made me realize I should let go of my teenage bias against Epiphone. A year later, the Bonamassa Black Beauty was released, and I had to buy it. I'm not a Joe Bonamassa fan, but I love Les Pauls, especially customs, and I was happy that they changed that ugly headstock and put a full-size split diamond on it, so I decided that was going to be my first Les Paul. And it was also a flawless guitar. Up to March 2022 at least, but that's not Epiphone's fault. I'll get to that in a future video. Since those two experiences were so good though, for Christmas 2020 I bought myself the Koa Custom, and that's when I discovered trouble in the quality control paradise. There were some minor things, like the fretboard looking and feeling like it came straight out of a chimney. The bridge had to be replaced because the saddle heights were very inconsistent, and most concerningly, the truss rod adjusted properly, but it moved freely in the neck vertically between the headstock and the body. It still plays fine, and it's one of my favorite guitars, so all was forgiven. And then I bought the Gold Glory in 2021, and again, it was flawless. Since I liked the P90 in that so much, I wanted a neck P90, and I ended up getting the SG Special, and that is the worst guitar I've ever bought. It sounded amazing, so I wanted to make it work, but it had the same bad bridge saddles, unseated truss rod, and worst of all, fretwork that was terrible. They were sharp, there were so many high frets, the nut was cut unusably low. Unplugged, there was no variation between notes because the fret buzz was so bad. I tried to fix it, but the more I dug, the more stuff I found wrong with it, so I returned it to Zounds because they have a no-hassle return policy. And after a month, I realized I was getting nowhere with it. You might have noticed a pattern I experienced by this point, and that's that signature models have much better quality control than standard Epiphone releases. And that's still true for me to this day. I've got the new Power Player series guitars along with this 335, and they're much better than the Koa and that SG Special, but they still have had some minor issues that needed tending to, not related to setup. This 335 was flawless though, so I feel it's safe to say the premium they charge for signature Epiphones probably encompasses that extra quality control. So with that in mind, even though this is the most expensive import Epiphone I've ever seen, when you start with a standard 335 and add a case, add a Maestro, both of the burst buckers, and what seems to be Epiphone standard $200 signature premium, that $1,300 makes a lot of sense. Outside of that, these Bonamassa models sell, and they hold their value and even appreciate in value. I didn't mean to sound harsh earlier when I said I'm not a fan. I just meant I don't listen to his music. I don't know his music. As a person, I'm a fan, though. I've read and watched a lot of his interviews through the years, and one viewpoint of his that I share is that a good guitar is a good guitar. It doesn't matter where it's made or what it cost. The Bonamassa Epiphones are good guitars. Some people think they're too expensive, some people think they're too cheap. Tomato, tomato, right? All I can say as someone who hasn't paid for this guitar, full disclosure, it absolutely feels worth the price, and if it wasn't so gigantic, I would definitely keep it. If you're considering this guitar because you're a Bonamassa fan or you want a 335 and you don't think that the 335 size will bother you, I 100% recommend it, and I don't think you'll be disappointed with anything about it. I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and I'd like to thank my friends at Zounds for making this possible. If you need picks or strings or anything, I'd like to ask that you consider shopping with them and possibly consider using my affiliate link. A percentage of your purchase at no cost to you will be kicked back to me, and it will help support me in continuing to make videos. If you'd like to keep in touch, I've recently started an Instagram again, so my tag is up here on the channel. Come say hey, it'd be great to catch up.